Good afternoon, and welcome to a little bit of a guide about how to become a consultant so you can put on a casual t-shirt, work in bare feet. I'm actually wearing slippers. It's okay. To be able to, I guess, work according to your own standards, or you can suit up and dress up and great and go out there in the world and become a consultant on site as well. My name's Dante St James. Let's get this one underway so we can share that screen and show you a bit more about the world of becoming a consultant and some of the things you may have to consider along the way. A quote here: the greatest skill that a consultant can have is the ability to ask the right questions. And that's always the case, whether you're working for whether you're consulting for a firm full time and you're coming from the outside looking in, or if you're just doing a little bit of consulting work with them here and there. The greatest ability you can have is to ask the right questions to get, I guess, the information out that you need to get out in order to be able to do the work you're being paid to be able to do. This particular webinar is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program. It's in conjunction with the Australian Government, delivered in Western Australia by Business Station themselves, in Brisbane and Queensland by Regional Development Australia Brisbane, and in the Northern Territory by Treaty Business Consulting. You can watch this later on YouTube, either looking for my name, Dante St James, or through Business Station. And you can find out more about Business Station's new digital solutions program, which is starting in August, and you can express your interest at businessstation.com.au. More on that a little bit later on. What we're going to cover in here is what a consultant actually is, if that's probably a thing that a lot of people who've only ever been employees may not understand exactly what a consultant is. We'll look at identifying your niche, narrowing down on the problem you solve, narrowing down on the reason why an employer or a company should choose to have you consult with them. Look at your online presence, look at lead generation and sales, continuous improvement, your personal brand, and business models that can work really well for consultants based upon my own experience and the many consultants I come across in life as well. A little bit about me: I've studied with Western Sydney University, New South Wales, University of New South Wales. My old alma mater would kill me if they knew I was describing it as New South Wales University. The Chartered Institute of Marketing, with a bunch of marketing and digital marketing diplomas and postgraduate work, and New South Wales TAFE for a lot of micro-credentials along the way. I work as a lead trainer with Facebook Australia and New Zealand, as well as being a digital marketing associate and media planning professional. And then I've done a lot of work with Google's Digital Springboard program, the Be Connected program with the Australian government, as well as this program, the ASBAS Digital Solutions, and as a new business assistant with NICE Mentor in Northern Territory. How I've come to consult has been a long and winding road, and I'll tell you a bit of the tips along the way about how that has worked. But in the meantime, the companies that I have consulted with and continue to consult with in some cases are Facebook Australia. I do a lot of consulting work for them, both online and in person, as well as in training facilities. Through Treaty Business Consulting, which is a Northern Territory and Queensland-based business consulting firm, through the Northern Territory government, to various other departments, from the Department of Industry, Tourism and Trade, as well as the Department of the Chief Minister, the Department of the Chief Administrator, and thinking of the one other department, Education and Training, I've also worked with, and with the Department of Infrastructure and Investment. Through Iscariot Media, which has got me into the Queensland Tourism Industry Council, and then through into others like New South Wales Health, and Google through their Digital Springboard program, the Northern Territory Tourism Department, or Tourism NT, NBN, I'm an accredited business advisor for them, so I often get put in place to consult to businesses about their NBN usage. With Lean Startup Labs, I'm a consulting contributor, and I contribute a lot of my startup experience to their work, as well as a company called Hira that produces a rentals app, Mobi, which is an upcoming carpooling app, Mate Telecommunications, Vodafone, Amasim Telecommunications, Sumo Energy, the Broome Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, and Ingrid Arna Training. There's a lot more than those, and that's probably so many that I rattled off there, but it's to give you the idea that consulting isn't just a thing you do for one business. It can be something you can do constantly in different ways to lots of different businesses. A consultant basically is a person who is an expert in a particular field who gives professional advice to individuals and businesses in their area of expertise. Now, some of the different kinds of consultants you may want to look at are those who consult as business advisors or consultants. So they advising businesses on things to do. Some other consultants could be those who are financial consultants. They go in and assist businesses and people with how to better manage their finances. Things like financial coaches, even bookkeepers and accountants and business planners. Wellness consultants can help you to become better at certain physical activities. As nutritionist consultants, they'll help you to better handle what you're eating and how you're managing your. And then you might also look at different kinds of consultants, as in those who are sales consultants. They are consultants to a company selling those products. So in cases, I'm a sales consultant for Mate Telecommunications, Vodafone, Amaysim, and Sumo Energy, but I also consult to those companies out of my expertise at accessing small business in regional areas. A sales consultant can also be someone who comes into your company and shows you how to sell. So there's someone who tells you how to basically trains you how to be better salespeople. And then you can look at technology consultants. They're IT people who come in and show you how to better use your IT, how to get better IT in there. Or they could be people in the realm of cybersecurity to consult you through to having a safer online environment. And then you can have legal consultants, which we all usually call attorneys or lawyers or solicitors, but they could be people who know enough about that law to come in and give you a brief consultation on particular areas of the law. Now, the qualifications and credentials that are and are not necessarily required for consultants to be who they are generally come in the form of certification, a track record, and then membership. So certification can show that it helps if you've had at least a certification in what you consult on. Now, a university degree does help with this, but it doesn't necessarily be the only place to go. It could be something like diplomas or any sort of certifications you've got for individual skills or individual systems. A track record is simply having a proven record of your clients and outcomes, and it gives you credibility for all the people you've worked with. Memberships are things like peak bodies, so chambers of commerce or local tourism authorities or energy clubs, or those kind of peak bodies that represent certain industries and groups of businesses. And it shows you that you're not a lone wolf just going out there all on your own and trying to make a go of things without some sort of backing or at least cover or at least reputation that's been checked out by a community like that. Now let's look at certification. The obvious one is university degrees, bachelor's, master's, doctorates, PhDs, all those kind of things. This is the king of the heap if you have one, but it doesn't necessarily make you better for having it. I did mine because a previous employer put me through both a bachelor's and a master's over quite a number of years that I was with them. And I was able to come out with a bachelor, a double bachelor degree of business information systems and marketing, and then a master's in business information systems, which has certainly helped me to have a lot stronger relationship with data and the ability to be able to get data out of systems. Then there is your other diplomas and qualifications from things like TAFE and technical schools, those kind of things. They're just as good when they're as a university degree when they're coupled with time spent in the industry. Now, a university degree can be a fantastic thing to have. But if you have a university degree and you don't have any experience in the industry whatsoever, it's nowhere near as good as having a TAFE or another diploma or a TAE or a advanced diploma or something like that when it's coupled with time that you've actually spent doing the work. So just bear that in mind before you start thinking you can't become a consultant because you don't have university degrees. These other sources of degrees are just as good, if not better. And then there's what I call micro credentials. These are certifications that are in specific skills and systems and from reputable institutions and companies. For example, I maybe have a university degree, I maybe have some TAFE diplomas, but I also have tons of little certifications, say in LinkedIn marketing fundamentals, in Facebook digital marketing associate, in Facebook community management, or in Google's AdWords, or Google's analytics programs. Those micro credentials show that you have put at least some time into learning more about very specific skills that could very well be used in the businesses that you're consulting to. Next up, your track record is where you can have things like case studies showing work you've done and how you did it. Now, I personally prefer case studies when I'm selling business to business, simply because it shows that you can add a bit more detail without necessarily identifying the company. Not every company that I work with is keen to have it known that they employ outside consultants, when it seems to be a bad thing for them because they should know how to handle it all in-house themselves. Or they may want to go, you know what, we don't want to identify the particular consultant we've used because they may be someone who is out of state, out of country, or just out of our particular city. So quite often I'm not allowed to mention in my contracts who I have worked with. I have to just basically use things like case studies that don't identify who they are and just tell the basics of the kind of work I did for that particular business. Similar to case studies are testimonials, but they are just a little bit different. Testimonials are based on actual clients or employers who can back up the work that you've done, or provided a particular testimonial that says, yes, this is someone who has worked for you. Now, this is pretty much that ironclad thing of if they can do something like a video testimonial, that's pretty amazing. Having a photo of that person backed up with words of recommendation from them on what you're able to do, even better. Then comes things like employment history. Now, this is probably the most obvious place to start with, simply because most consultants have started as employees at some point. So if you can say, I worked in business system process improvement for the Power and Water Corporation or for Energy Australia for 13 years, it therefore shows that you have quite a lot of on the ground, realistic, practical experience in business process improvement. So therefore, it can be shown that if you've done lots of business process improvement in the past for such a big company as, you know, Energy Australia or AGL or Power and Water Corporation, then you should be able to be trusted to do similar things with companies that are much, much smaller, or small businesses even. Then when we move out of the track record, we're moving into the part where we look at memberships. And this is specifically about chambers of commerce. And it bunches you in with similar organizations that also show a commitment to your local area or your economy. Some of my memberships include the Chamber of Commerce Northern Territory, which shows that I wish to be regarded as a Northern Territory business and proud to be called so. Another one will be Skull International, which is a tourism association. Tourism Top End, which is a tourism association. The Broome Chamber of Commerce. Things like Territory Proud, which shows that I'm a Northern Territory based business and therefore proud of that fact and be seen as a preferred person for people from the Northern Territory to shop with. It depends on where you are and how you're going to connect with these, and how you might be listed as a person who is supporting a particular organization or not. Things like the Australian Marketing Institute, the Australian Institute of Office Professionals, any of those kind of professional things, certified practicing accountants, chartered accountants, any of those networks are the things you want to show that you've got support for and have been supported by, so that then it's known to the public and to your potential clients that you have industry backing, not just a lone wolf out on your own. Your industry peak bodies are things like the Real Estate Institutes, the Australian Computer Society, if you're in IT and communications, AMI for marketing, Law Society for legal, could be the Energy Club for the mining and minerals sector. Any of those are showing that you are connected to others in your industry and you're not just one of those rogues that sits out there on your own, sort of acting out of your own volition and not really showing a code of ethics. And then of course there's things like police checks. It's not really a membership as such, but these things certainly offer some credibility. I've got a police check sitting on my desk, actually in a frame, ready to be photographed anytime I need to send it to people. And I update that thing every 6 months. I've also got a Working with Children card in the Northern Territory, which says that I'm clearly able to be trusted with children, as I don't have any outstanding or any sort of problems when it comes to kids and working with those in my life. And before you start though, you've got to understand that consulting is still a business. Even though it feels like employment sometimes, it is a business. Now, there is risk involved in going out on your own. That's obvious. You've got to organize all your own finances, and no one's there as a safety net. The cash flow will be up, it will be down, it will be all over the place. I've had a particularly good cash flow year so far. It's improved out of sight from this time last year, I'll tell you that much. But after July, when I have this month is a huge cash flow month, August will be much, much slower. So I need to look for additional work to carry me through that month so that I'm able to continue to pay my bills and live, basically. So cash flow is something which you have to predict according to the work that you've got. So you may require things like spreadsheets. I've got a very complicated spreadsheet I use, which predicts my cash flow, looks at what money I have to make, and it goes, okay, you're going to hit a problem in September if you don't sell 3 websites now, or if you don't take on 4 new clients now. Now, no one is going to be there to bail you out of trouble. There is no safety net for consultants. You can't just have sick days. You can't just have holidays. If you take time off, you do not get paid. So you're not getting holiday pay or anything like that, unless you have formed a company and you're looking to do something like, I don't know, maybe turn yourself into an incorporated entity. That means then you're able to do something like that. You're able to then become an employee of your own company, which is a very good tax way to do things, but it's also a great way for you to be able to manage your I guess your cash flow, manage your the way you've set yourself up, and then also manage to what's the word I'm looking for? Where you manage to give yourself the entitlements that an employee would normally have, like leave, sick pay, all those kind of guys. Now, whilst it's also a business, you have to then go forward and get a whole bunch of registrations that come with operating a business. The first one is an ABN. So you cannot operate as a consultant on a cash only basis because that's against the law. So you have to become an ABN holder. Now, if you are a small business on this call, you wouldn't be on this call if you were not an ABN holder. It was one of the prerequisites of joining this program. You also may require a registered business name. So that case, it is, perhaps you don't want to operate under your name only. You may want to operate a business name, particularly if you're starting a company and going into an incorporated structure. That is definitely something you need to do. That's something which you need to be able to organize. Other registrations can include things like trademarks. If you've got a particular idea that you've got a methodology or you've got a system that you use that you want to trademark, you might want to do that. Food registration. So, for instance, if you're someone who works in food, you're consulting people with food, you might need, food safety, responsible servers of alcohol, even all those kinds of little registrations are required by different industries and different places. You may also need to form a company. So if you need to form a company, you may need to do that via ASIC and then via an accountant who's probably in a better position to advise on that than I am, because let's face it, I'm actually still a sole trader and I have 7 individual business names and lines of business. So that's also brings me to something else you will definitely need to register yourself for, particularly if you're looking to make enough money to live on, is GST, goods and services tax. You will need to register for that because you're going to get across that $75,000 a year threshold very, very quickly. Anyone who's operating under $75,000 a year as a business is not really a business at this stage because they're not really earning enough to live on. You cannot live on really successfully under $75,000 a year and have a business that sustains you or even anybody else for that matter. So once you hit that 75K mark, then you're starting to really get some momentum as a business. And then that also opens up a world of grants and tenders that you can go into because you're now GST registered. Before you start, though, you will need certain insurances, and these will vary from industry to industry and state to state. The one that you'll need across all of them is a public liability insurance. You will not be able to work on site with other people until you have that particular insurance. You will not be able to have people attend your home office even if you don't have that insurance. You will not be able to, host events, rent out rooms, and have functions as a business until you have registered yourself with public liability insurance, usually up to the amount of about $20 million worth of coverage. Now, one thing to notice is, though, that some industry associations that you join, that you may be members of, will provide that for you. For example, I have public liability insurance as part of my membership with the Australian Computer Society. It covers me for public liability, and the next one, which is called professional indemnity insurance, which I also have another cover with that under the Australian Marketing Institute. Professional indemnity insurance indemnifies you against being sued by people for mistakes you may have made, or perhaps for things you may have done that a client wants to sue you over. So say, for instance, you gave advice, a client then lost a lot of money as a result of that, and they decide to take you through to court. Your professional indemnity insurance will cover that, as long as you haven't broken the rules along the way and acted irrationally and insanely by providing really, really crappy crappy advice to people. So professional indemnity and public liability insurance are generally the two that, if you're a consultant providing advice or providing some kind of work for people that's based upon your expertise and background, these are the two you'll absolutely have to have. But there are other insurances that may make a difference to how you're working. If you work with lots of lists of people's details, if you're, for instance, as part of your consultation, receiving great big long lines of people's contact details and personal information, then cybersecurity insurance may be something that you need, because you're handling such great deals of data and people's personally identified details. You may need that as well. If that gets out, you've then essentially just pretty much broken a whole lot of people's privacy, which is not what you want to do. So that kind of insurance could be good for you. Basic business insurance could be things for like third-party fire, theft, stealing, all those kind of things, cyclones and bushfires and things that are actually going to physically damage your business. Things like workers' compensation insurance then comes apart when you have employees. You cannot have employees without having workers' compensation insurance. If somebody is in your home office, they fall over, they break their leg and their arm and they can't work, then your workers' compensation insurance will cover that employee whilst they are unable to work and healing from that. You will need to have it. It's not an option. You have to have it if you have employees. So let's have a look then at the kind of consulting that you can do. We've had a look at all the things you have to do before you become a consultant, but what do you do when it actually comes time to be a consultant? What is the niche or the specific specialty you're going to go into as a consultant? First of all, let's ask yourself a few questions. This will help you to be able to, I guess, outline what your niche might already be. One of those could be, do you have a unique point of view? Now, the example I would ask myself there is, do you have a particular approach or a methodology or a proven technique that others don't provide that you do, and that you're able to make that sellable? That could be your particular unique point of view. An example could be that I have a excuse me, an accreditation with Donald Miller's Story Brand. So I have a Story Brand certified consultant. So my unique point of view would be that I'm able to provide accredited Story Brand assessments for businesses in Australia and New Zealand. So that's something that most people that we see in our industry do not have, even though they might be able to teach the techniques, they're not accredited to do so. Secondly, you would ask yourself, do I have authority in this particular field? Now, what does that mean? When you have authority in a field, it means that you are recognized by the industry or by others that you are an expert in the field, that you have credibility and some kind of authority in that field. And by authority, we're talking about the fact that you would have some kind of option to be able to For people to say, yes, I absolutely do have the ability to deliver information on this particular thing. Now, this particular thing would be, whether you have background on database management, background on Python scripting for data, big data analysis. Do you have the ability to be able to work with certain kinds of paints that are very finicky to work with that others do not? Do you have certifications, or do you have experience that people would recognize in specific areas in the industry you work with? So whilst you may have a unique point of view, if you also have authority in a certain area, so for instance, having that unique point of view could be, okay, I have a specific technique for making sure that cafes are profitable and are able to make their customers raving fans. I have authority in this field by having worked with these 15 different coffee companies, with the coffee commune in Brisbane with Phil DeBella. I've also worked with all these different, that creates your authority in the field. And then finally, probably so important, is that you have to line up whether you have got a demand for what it is you do. If people are able to go, you know what, I understand and completely, I understand that people are actually looking for this and they're willing to pay for it. So what it means is someone actually seeing enough value in what you do to pay you money for what you do? And do they recognize you as someone worth paying money to? That's a really big question, and one of the questions that a lot of people going into consultation work do not ask themselves. They don't actually work this out to say, you know what, does anyone actually want what I'm selling? Does anyone actually even care? And that's a very dangerous thing to ignore if you don't actually ask that question. And so many people don't ask that. Now, why is it important to ask that question? Because it tells you whether there's actually anybody who wants what you're doing, wants what you're selling, understands what you're doing, and has any desire to pay you money for those things that you want to make money on. So, what are you the best at? That's a really good question to ask yourself going into consulting, so you can be in a position to really be that authority and back yourself. It also helps wash away any sort of imposter syndrome you may have about whether people are willing to pay you for your expertise. Now, as someone who jumped into consulting years ago and came out of a long-term employment situation, 13 and a half years with one company. And I was advised that I probably would become a good consultant because I know a lot of stuff and I got tons and tons of depth of experience and abilities. So I went, okay, what am I the best at in my realm? Well, I'm not the best at everything to do with websites. I'm not the best at everything to do with social media. I'm certainly not the best to do with everything to do with business information systems, but I'm the best at a whole lot of things, like solving a specific problem for a specific kind of client. I'm one of the best people in Australia to consult on technology matters to tourism businesses, particularly when it comes to their digital marketing and tracking their conversions through from people booking to visiting their website through to actually booking a room or a hotel night. So solving a specific problem for a specific kind of client can be really good for you, such as my friend Jerome, who actually does 3D spatial consulting. Now, what does that mean? He creates 3D renders of things like renovations or projects that are coming up, or the things that people might be building a new house or a new warehouse or a shed, and they want a 3D model to be able to see what it looks like so they can go, what can fit in there, and they can model it just not for so you can know what it looks like, which is great for if you're buying a house, but also the modeling for how much volume of materials and shelving and storage can go into that particular shed or warehouse. It's a very important thing to do because otherwise you don't know whether what you need that warehouse for can actually be done. So he'll do all that and model all that out so you can actually see right there how things fit and test things like forklifts and vehicles and people working in there. So that's a really specific thing. And he is one of the best out there at this. He had lost a lot of work over COVID, and now he seems to have picked up some really good work with people who are willing to see what it is he does. And how did he work that out that people wanted that? He found that there was a gap in the industry that fitted what he was good at. There was a shortage of people doing what he does, and a shortage of people using the depth of experience and technique and quality of work that he particularly has. I found there was a gap in my industry for people who actually had background experience and credentials and reputation in what I do when it comes to social media, and particularly with the depths of the Facebook advertising programs and verification of Commerce Manager and all that sort of thing. So there was a gap in the industry for that. So I walked in, filled that gap, and went, you know what? I think I'm doing the right thing. I'm working in the right area here. So an example of some niches could be not just an accountant who's great at business growth, but an accountant who then goes and becomes a consultant who helps other accountants to grow their business. So she's not only an accountant, she's not only great at growing her own business, but she's able to duplicate that process out to help other consultants to grow other accountants, to grow their businesses. And this is what can be a very, very tight niche. You're not just someone who's great at business growth, but you're specifically good at growing accountancy practices. So therefore you can help other people to grow their accountancy practices. Another niche could be a plumber who is really good with digital systems. I know a guy like this. And this plumber became, or in his case, a carpenter. He became a consultant who helped other carpenters to manage their bookings and their workflow. So because he knew how to use some great systems, particularly one called ServiceMate, he was able to automate the marketing of these things right through to the delivery of work in a workflow so that he could then very, very easily help that business to make more money and manage their bookings better. So he became a consultant to other carpenters in using digital systems. He certainly has a lot more authority in that area than I do because he is a carpenter himself. So therefore, people who are carpenters will take him a lot more seriously. A farrier is someone who's great with horse nutrition. So they might be able to, help to make sure that horses are eating the right thing so that they're nice and healthy and performing the way they should. But a farrier who is great with horse nutrition might also become a consultant in horse nutrition and supplements. So a farrier isn't someone who works with horse nutrition. They sort of work with, training horses and breaking them in, that kind of thing. But they happen to also know stuff about horse nutrition. So they go, you know what? I'm going to become a consultant in horse nutrition and supplements on top of being a farrier. This is quite often what we call a side gig. It may not be your core area of interest, but it's a new growing area that you're going to become very, very good at. Now, you do not have to be great at everything. It's a really, really tempting thing to be good at everything. And you might even think that there is a temptation to be quite a generalist at these things. I know a couple of generalists who quite proudly say that they're digital generalists. They don't know the depths of how to work these things, but they know what the systems and what the things are that they should be, and they can refer people through to people like me who do know a lot, much more about a particular thing. The problem is with generalists Google is also a generalist. So when you're a generalist, it's not really leaving a lot of room to become a great consultant, other than you becoming someone who just points people in directions. That's more like a traffic manager or a search engine rather than a consultant. So specialists are better paid than generalists. This is why you probably want to become someone who's very good at your specific niche in your specific industry, because you're going to be paid a lot better than people who are just giving general advice at the sort of the big picture helicopter view of the world, rather than the on the ground chipping away at the salt mines. Specialists generally work at the things that they love. And what that means, I guess, is that if you become a niche or specialist consultant, you're probably going to love the work you do a lot more than generalists. Generalists, because they don't necessarily love the thing they're in, they just like having general information about things rather than specific information. Then they get sort of stuck in going, well, I know enough about these things to be dangerous, but not enough to actually be effective. So being a specialist gives you the opportunity to work much more closely with the specific things that you love. A generalist actually isn't an expert at anything. They can write books on things. They can, without going into any detail, they can write websites and blogs and social media messages that sort of paint the picture of them being quite smart. But the minute that someone asks them a question they don't know, they either have to be honest and say, look, I don't know, I'll find out from someone, or they go and Google it like just about everyone does, or they actually do know the question, and it means that they're a generalist who has expert knowledge in some specific areas as well. Whilst you can be a generalist and be quite happy with that, you can't be a generalist much often and be a specialist, but a specialist can be a generalist as well. Sort of playing with words there, but just remember that the words there to take away are that a specialist can be a generalist, but a generalist generally can't be a specialist. When you solve a specific problem for a specific client, this is when you become a very, very tightly specialized consultant. So rather than a digital marketer, someone who knows how to use the platforms and make them all work, you could become a social media lead generation specialist. Now, I'm not trying to make up some funny, fancy words to make it seem like that the rubbish collector is a sanitation technician. What I'm saying is that rather than being a digital marketer yourself, who does digital marketing for yourself and others, you could become someone who helps companies to generate better leads through social media, because you're doing that yourself every day. I can be a very good Facebook ads consultant because not only have I been trained and continue to be trained on Facebook ads by Facebook themselves, I'm also someone who has a $7,000 a month spend on social media advertising himself. So I know how this works. You can imagine over a year how much I'm spending on advertising. And that's just for myself, let alone the $250,000 a month that I'm spending of other people's money right now. So rather than becoming a life coach, you can solve a very specific problem for a specific client. Because let's face it, the term life coach has kind of been used to death. People don't feel comfortable with the term. They think it sounds really wanky and tossy, and they don't really trust that term very much. So they might look at things like going, well, I don't really want to work with a life coach because that means I'm kind of a little bit of a failure. So rather than feeling like a failure, they might just go, well, I'm a wealth mindset professional or specialist. So rather than a life coach who teaches you to feel better about yourself and to become more organized or stuff like that, I can be a wealth and empowerment mindset specialist who's helping people to think higher and better to achieve greater things. And also tell someone that there's a specific problem you solve. A life coach, life is a very nebulous, very wobbly, very vague concept, but wealth and mindset are very specific things that people can go, yes, I do need a better mindset and I want to be wealthy. Rather than an admin assistant, you could march yourself into battle as a time management consultant. This allows you to be so much more than just someone in admin, just my secretary, just my receptionist. You become someone who's a time management expert. And I know one of those people who lives in Alice Springs, her name is Barbara, and she's amazing when it comes to time management and systems that help you to save time and be more effective and more efficient. You could also look for the in-demand skills that exist in your industry. So rather than you going, this is what I want to be, this is my dream, this is my thing, this is my passion, you could go, well, I know lots of things, I like them all. What's the thing that's in demand right now? So you could say that someone who is working in search engine optimization for e-commerce is someone who is very, very in demand right now. These people are being asked for help in forums all the time. If you're in digital marketing or you have digital marketing you want to do, Digital Marketers Australia is probably the best forum because there's constantly people looking for work. There's constantly people who are looking for people to fill those. Exactly. There's more people asking for help than there are people who are available and to be paid to do that work. If you're someone who knows to outsource work offshore, you are very in demand. In fact, I need to speak to you because I need some more virtual assistants to help me with some of the grunt work that I don't have the time to do anymore. Or you could be someone who knows how to organize backpackers in a market like now where there isn't many backpackers around to do things like bar work, hospitality work, farm work, fruit picking, all those kind of things. So if you don't know how to do those, if you don't know how to organize those things yourself, chances are you're looking for someone who's an expert at these things. And I work with a number of people on LinkedIn who are experts in this area and can help to point me in the right direction if I'm looking at these particular types of people. So now we understand what our niche is and what the little thing is that we want to fulfill in our particular business. We have to have a bit of an idea about what our value proposition is. What is a value proposition? It's all about what is the thing that's a summary of who you help, the problem you solve, and the method you use. How are you answering the question of can you help to someone? How are you answering the question of can this problem be solved? And how you're answering the question of how this problem can be solved. So that's a little clear statement. The example could be you are maybe someone who's putting together, well, let's have a play with this. Your value proposition. Me, myself, I could say, I help small businesses to grow their customer base by better using digital systems to deliver better quality leads. That could be my value proposition. Yours could be, I help restaurants to grow, to be able to more adequately get more diners in and out every night by organizing their workflow and how efficiently they can get food from order to table in the shortest amount of time. Or your value proposition could be, I help women to look their very best by introducing the simple, cheap, and inexpensive techniques every day that can make them look and feel great. So your value proposition is kind of like a little, almost like a little elevator pitch, but not quite so intense, which is just something, I guess, for a reference to you is, who do you help? What do you get? What result do you help them get? And what is the process you go through to get them to that thing? Now, once you've got that value proposition, then what you want to do is create that value proposition, everything you're doing and able to do, and bring that to an online presence. So an online presence doesn't necessarily have to be a booming social media account, but let's have a look at what those online presences could be. Now, your online presence doesn't have to be social media, and probably shouldn't be only social media, because it's not your property. It's not your place to be advertising everything that you are, because quite honestly, when you're advertising a lot of consulting services or weight loss and before and after, you might be breaking a lot of these social media platforms' terms of service. So understand that while social media is a great channel to reach people, it's not your property. It's Mark Zuckerberg's. You also need to understand that you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to go out and build a website. You can build your own website using things like Google Sites, WordPress.com, Wix, or Squarespace. If you can't manage to do that well yourself and manage to make them look good, because let's face it, not everyone's a graphic genius, then you can get help from people to work with you on those systems. You know, I myself work with WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, and Google Sites, as well as Joomla and Shopify. So it's not like there aren't lots of options out there for you. It's just a matter of you just deciding you want to go and work with these systems on your own, and then get help from someone who's an expert in that area. One thing that's very controversial, a lot of branding people, the big hair, big teeth kind of crowd. I'm not even talking about the women there. I'm talking about the bloody men. If you don't actually need to have sorted out your perfect corporate headshot and your logo at this stage. You do not have to have everything sitting together absolutely perfect before you go to market. What's more important is that you have to have money to be able to pay for all those things. What you do need to do, though, is to create yourself some kind of repeatable lead generation system to bring in new clients to you all the time. And the most normal way to do this in this day and age, and probably the most inexpensive way to do it, is through ads on Facebook that lead to a landing page. That landing page then has some sort of video on it that explains what your value proposition is and who you are, and helps people to feel great about the idea of booking a free consultation with you. In that free consultation, you can explore ideas. We often call that a discovery call. You can explore those ideas about what the client wants to achieve and how you may be able to help them do that. Now, honestly, I have probably about 50-50 of my actually probably a little bit less than that, probably about 40% of all my free consultations, discovery calls, end up in me going, look, I don't think I'm the best person to work with you. However, I would like to introduce you to blah, blah, blah. And I'll give them the details and let the person know who I'm referring them to, that I've just referred them through to that as well. So I've got a very big network of people that I work for who I value their work and probably are either more available than I am, or are much better for that niche than I am in that particular case for that very specific kind of client. So then what you'll do is to follow up to close the sale. So let's go through that again. You'll advertise on Facebook or something similar. It could be LinkedIn, could be Google. Your ads then go to a landing page on a website somewhere. On that landing page, you'll have something like a description of what your value is and what you provide and the services you have, maybe even a little bit of pricing if you're particularly brave and don't mind being quoted like that. You'll then have a free consultation, where generally a discovery call where people will talk with you and you'll talk with them to see what it is that's so valuable about what you do and what you can help that particular client with in their world too. And then after that, quite often you'll have a follow-up that includes something like providing a proposal or providing some sort of quote that then you follow up to close the deal and get them across the line from being a lead to being a client. So once you've got that lead in there and you've got them sold, you need to then deliver the goods. And that's a big problem with a lot of consultants, myself included, because I've had this problem myself in the past. I'm still working on identifying where my shortfalls are in my delivery process, is you need to deliver what you'll say you'll do. Make sure you can deliver, because you will not last long as a consultant if you keep failing to deliver for your clients. I've got 2 clients I'm running late on right now that I really, really need to catch up on and finish in the next 24 hours. Otherwise, I'm in the position where I'm letting them down and getting a bad reputation. You need to have strong communication. A failure to communicate with your client is a failure to keep your client. Clients usually don't mind so much that you're running behind. What they care about is the fact that they never knew. Nobody told them that they were running behind time. So please, if there's one thing you can take away from today, it is, don't worry so much about running behind. Just make sure you're communicating with your client that you are running behind. And finally, having some sort of report or a wrap up at the end shows a client how you delivered, that ensures you get a good reference or a good review or a good recommendation, and you leave with a good reputation. Sometimes it might just take a, hey, we're finished up now. Just think, let me, what's your postal address? I'll just send you the details through so you've got a hard copy of it. And with that hard copy, you send them a bunch of flowers or a box of chocolates. Say, look, it's been really fun working with you. Thank you so much for being part of this. I get very surprised when companies do that with me. And it's probably something I really need to look at doing myself to ensure that I finish off well with clients and don't have sort of this horrid situation where people feel like they've just been left out in the dark with no help, no support, and no recognition of the work that they've done with you as well. Continuous improvement is so important for any consultant, because you cannot rest upon the laurels of what you learned 30 years ago. 40, 50 years ago, we were learning how to program in BASIC, Logo, and COBOL. Those languages basically don't exist anymore when it comes to code. We might be using Swift or Node.js, JavaScript or HTML or any other sort of different languages like that. But those languages no longer, if you want to consult on those, you'd find there's no demand for it because they don't exist anymore. So you have to learn more things. You have to improve yourself over time. And one way you can do that is to make room and time for it, is to offload the things that take too much away from the things that make you money. For example, I am just looking for a cleaner right now to help me clean my house each couple of weeks. I don't need every week, but every couple of weeks. Now I can vacuum the floors, I can steam mop the floors, I can clean the kitchen and keep my bedroom looking tidy and neat and healthy. What I can't find the time to do in anything, because I don't really take a lot of weekends times off or night times off, is to scrub bathrooms. So that's one thing I will want a cleaner to come and do. Now, at my hourly rate of $180 an hour, it's not reasonable for me to spend 2 hours cleaning a bathroom, because it costs me $360 to clean my bathrooms. That seems like a ridiculous amount of money. I don't need to pay $360 every 2 weeks for someone to clean my bathroom. I can pay someone to come in every weekend $120 to clean my bathroom. That's a big saving on $360. Once you start to recognize your worth and your hourly rate, you apply that to every area of your life. For example, it's also too expensive for me to do my own bookkeeping. For me to sit there and manage all my receipts and use Receipt Bank and match it all up and do all that sort of reconciliation, I am too expensive. At $180 an hour, I'm too expensive to be doing that kind of grunt work. I give that to my bookkeeper, who is at that rate. So he does it at a much lower hourly rate than what I would do it. And he also has the systems to help make that quicker for him. He also communicates back to me when there's issues. So I only have to follow up on the things that are problems rather than things that come up as being, things that just sort of appear on a daily basis that I have to keep reconciling in an account like Xero. Then also things you can offload may be things such as, I don't know how to think about it, like the copywriting. You might go, look, I do copywriting. I'm not the best at it. It takes me a while. At $180 an hour, it's taken me 4 hours to write copywriting for this website. That's too long. I'm going to hand it off to somebody else. So if you can get it for cheaper with someone else than what it would cost you in time to do, then it's time to actually hand that off and outsource it. You can also automate parts of your sales, reporting, and communications. Now, if you want to do that, it means you have to get used to systems. For instance, you could have your a bar that I've been working with recently that takes a lot of table bookings. Great little cocktail bar, awesome food, great entertainment. They're really, really doing well, growing fast and really succeeding. But Dom, who's the owner of that particular bar here in Darwin, he's decided that he cannot be constantly taking table bookings because it just takes away too much of his time. And he's not always available because he's often sleeping because he has to work so late, keeping the bar open. So instead of having that, he's now created a system where in Facebook, if you ask if you want to book a table, then you go, yep, I want to book a table. And it takes you to a table booking system, which means that you can do that all on your own without having to interact with a person to do it. How does that improve things? Well, it means that Dom now doesn't have to keep answering these questions on his mobile that keep coming up all day long. People can just book their own tables. Now he finds that instead of about 8 or 9 different inquiries per day about booking tables, it's now down to one that actually comes through to him, the keeper, because it's for a certain group booking that's a bit different than maybe like a table of 6. A group booking may be a table like a group for 30, which then means very, very different requirements than a simple table for 2 or table for 6. By automating that, he's saved a ton of time and has a much more efficient process for dealing with his customers. And then you look at what you can do yourself. What can be turned into a course or a set of instructions that your clients or potential customers can do on their own? Have you got DIYs, how-tos, sets of instructions, interactive online courses that people can do themselves, paying you a little bit of money, so they don't have to deal with you. It's like, I don't have to then do an hour-long consultation with someone. I can go, look, it can cost you $180 to book me for the hour, or it can cost you $30 to do this online course, which will show you how to do it. Much more efficient way of doing things, much easier way for you to operate. And then we look at building your personal brand. And this is an important one because this is how people will perceive you, how people will recognize you, how you'll be recognized by others. A personal brand, it's something that develops over time. You do not start out by going, I want a brand and I'm going to then go out and sell. You make your money first, then you go out and develop your personal brand, because you may change along the way. You may actually, change your mind on who you are. You create this whole personal brand that you're the person who wears bright pink dresses and has bright pink hair. And then you decide a year later that I don't want to do bright pink hair. I don't even like the color pink. It doesn't stand out. There's too many other girls who are doing pink. Well, then what you do, you become someone who is maybe the blue person with the brunette hair, or you change your whole entire brand approach. Make the money first, see what people like and see what people sort of point out about you that they like, then build your personal brand around those things. Your personal brand is the way that you're able to then charge higher rates for the job than you otherwise would get. Once you have a reputation amongst people, people are more willing to pay the money to get you specifically because they've been either, number one, referred to you, or number two, they recognize you and they know that they should have to pay more to see you. Just like going to the doctor or going to the specialist will get paid more because they are an expert that's specifically been referred to by the general practitioner. Use your social media to build up your audience and the recognition of your expertise. Post regularly, not stupidly, and post with purpose. Post with the ability to be able to share a message that helps either engage people by getting attention, educate people by showing your expertise, or exciting people into booking time with you or maybe buying your product. Submitting written pieces to things like publications, blogs, and podcasts helps to include your brand into more people's days so they can see you in more places around the internet. And then grow out your offering or change your offering altogether when you find that maybe what you've been selling isn't doing quite enough for you. There's different consultancy business models. There's the done for you model where you do the work entirely for the client. That's like going to a digital agency and saying, we will build your website for you. There's done with you. So you're doing some of it while the client also does some of it. So for instance, you're like a coach. You're coaching them through the process by sitting side by side with them or on a Zoom call to show them how to do the thing. And then there's one-to-one consultation, which is coaching the client in a private setting that's very, very concentrated on them. You may use one or all of these different models depending on where you're at and what you feel most comfortably doing. And when it comes to consultancy business models, there's group delivery where you can deliver lessons, workshops, coaching groups, personal training sessions to larger groups of people. You can deliver your expertise through online courses. They're infinitely scalable and they're largely automated, so you don't really have to do much with them. Or you can do a combination of two or more of these different things. Like for instance, I do a show you how to do it, a lesson sort of thing. Then I also do I'm going to do a course so you can learn how to do it yourself. Then we can do it one-to-one as a coaching thing. So I do it with you, or you handle over and my team and myself will do that for you. Hybrid delivery for most consultants is generally the way to go, because then you've got the way to scale up beyond where you're at now. You don't have to necessarily be stuck with exactly what you're doing right now. So our key takeaways are: want to become a consultant, you can start without any degree or any startup capital, because you're literally taking your own expertise with you. You can also choose a niche that you are an expert in that also has a lot of potential for growth. In other words, people are looking to pay people for advice and expertise like yours. You can build an online presence on social media in the web and have a repeatable sales pipeline process, something which you can then easily go down the path of Facebook ads, landing page, discovery call, proposal, closing the deal. And then finally, deliver, improve, and adjust your business model to keep your business growing. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. My name is Dante St James. I really appreciate you taking time out of your business to learn more about your business. You can contact me at dante@clickstarter.com.au. In the meantime, I'd like to invite you to express your interest in the new Digital Solutions Program that's coming up from Business Station, Treaty Business Consulting, and Regional Development Australia, Brisbane. That's to do with getting you a pathway through your digital requirements. It starts off with $44. Now, $44 gets you a lot of value. You'll be able to then have an initial consultation with myself or one of the other digital solutions advisors. We can then take you through a process of onboarding you and making sure you get the best value out of it with ourselves, others, and through online workshops and webinars as well. So we'll point you and say, hey, let's have a little bit of a chat about what you need now. But what we're going to do is I'm going to refer you through to Kaja, who is an excellent person in Facebook ads. And then Kaja will refer you back to me so we can then finish up the engagement, see if there's any gaps you need to fulfill, and then make sure that you've reported back to the government how wonderful the experience has been and how much you've enjoyed working with us. But in amongst that as well, after 3 hours of one-to-one engagement with people, you'll also get 4 hours to play with on different webinars and different online workshops as well. If you want to know more about that, please go to either businessstation.com.au and then express your interest in the program, so that when it starts up in August, we'll be able to get in touch with you and start onboarding you onto that program. Or you can go to asbas.com.au. I'd really like to thank you for joining me this afternoon, and I hope to see you in the next one.